Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sisterhood Society podcast. Have you guys missed us? Because I couldn't even tell you the last time we podcasted. Well, we did a Patreon only episode this week, so we're kind of on a roll. It's been 6 weeks, maybe.
Even our podcast manager was like, "Hey, how you guys doing?"
I texted her today for a clip, and she was like, wow, I feel like I haven't talked to you guys in forever. So we're not going to do like a full-on catch up. We'll do like a little one because we already did that for the Patreon. It ended up going from like us saying one really small thing about our lives and then basically almost 2 hours of us just like bantering. And I'm actually going to do a not so subtle plug for the Patreon because this month has been super awesome. We have a really great book of the month. Book club is next week. We had prayer night last night. We have a TV show club picked out for Tara's meeting. We have lots of content. We have like 10 or 12 pieces of content up already. So Tara and I both did some like vulnerable life updates this month in the Patreon. There's just always, and also it's kind of crazy because I feel like if you join now, there's like so much information to binge in there, so much content. So when you're missing us on the podcast, just join the Patreon because we lowered all the prices and there's tons of us there. So anyways, okay, so we're going to say what our good is. And I guess that can kind of be like a life update slash what is good. And then we'll get into some questions I've prepared, which the girls know nothing about. So Whitney, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So my good is I'm trying to think of something separate than what my good was yesterday.
You
Good
don't
ended
look
up
like
being yesterday.
well, you don't look like you're having Shakira hair this day today.
Oh yeah, I washed my hair today. And I let it air dry. So in its own right, it is kind of Shakira hair, but I had to like make it smaller today.
You're going for the side part.
Yeah, well, I always kind of flip it back and forth. But
Oh, right.
today, if I go like this, it's a little bit more tame. So we're sticking with this side.
Hmm.
My good. I am finally down 3 pounds. So hooray for me. My body is finally like, oh, am I supposed to lose weight? Okay. So that's good. I mean, it's
That's
so
great.
from my starting weight, I had lost like up to 4 pounds and then somehow gained it back, even though I wasn't doing anything different. So then it decided to drop it again. So we'll see if I get past 4 pounds this time. We'll see.
Have you guys ever seen people on TikTok that trend that like when a girl that's like trying to lose weight or is like chubby and she'll be like, when I get skinny, it's over for you bitches. And I always think that, like, look out when I get skinny, everyone. But it hasn't really happened in the last 4 years. So I guess people don't need to look out for anything. You know what I mean? So they'll just be pleasantly surprised once it happens. Tara, what's your good?
Well, my favorite thing that happened is Britain they were supposed to dress up like animals for school, and Britain wanted to look like a horse, and so she had Brecken do her face paint, and it was actually, I thought, really good for her.
It is good. It was good.
But I think it was a little too authentic, and she did not like it at all. And she was like, I am not going to school like this. It does not look like a horse. And it was kind of a mixture between like a horse, a cow, and like a creepy version of Jason. And my favorite comment about it was Kate's friend Michelle said, I think she was going for more like My Little Pony vibes and got Best in Show horse at the fair instead.
Totally. The funny thing is, like, we were sitting at the doctor's office this morning, set an OB appointment, and Phil was like scrolling and he saw Britton's face and he was like, that looks really good. Did she do that herself? And I'm like, no, Breck did. And he's like, well, I don't get why she's upset. Like, she looks like a horse. And I was like, that's what I said.
She's literally holding the stuffed animal horse in her hands. And I was like, if this was the look you were going for, you look like your animal. Right. It's like, it's kind of hard to replicate a horse on your face when your eyeballs are not like over here,
Yeah. And you don't have this like a long snout, essentially.
So, but my personal favorite was like she'd done like black on the tips of her nose. So it made her nose look like it was flared. And then her like really angry face. It was just like the whole combo of it. Every time I see it, I laugh. So
cute.
Yes, that was funny.
I love it. Well, I'm trying to think. I guess my good was we got to hear our baby's heartbeat this morning, which was really sweet. And I don't know what it is about like not showing yet or like not getting to see the baby, but you're like, there's like something like reassuring about getting to hear him. And it was funny because ever since 6 weeks, like every time we go in, they're always like, well, if we can't hear it, don't freak out. You know, they always give you that like speech or whatever. And at 6 weeks, like as soon as she put the probe in, she was like, by the way, if you guys don't know on the podcast, I'm pregnant. I guess we haven't even podcasted since that. Wow, that's wild. It feels so anticlimactic because I feel like I've talked about it so much like on social media. But at 6 weeks, when she put the probe in, she was like, oh my gosh, I can see the heartbeat right away. And like same with 8 weeks. And then when we went, I guess it was 9 weeks, and I met my OB and like graduated from IVF, she like could see it and hear it really, really well. So today it was just the Doppler, which is so anticlimactic. Like not getting a sono is not fun, but she was like, okay, if I can't hear it, like don't stress. I'll go get the ultrasound machine if we can't, which I thought was really nice that she offered that. I don't know if they normally offer that. And she's like, at this point of gestation, a lot of the time, like the baby's so small, it's hard to like find the heartbeat. But then like the second she put the probe on, you could hear it. And Phil, every time she does that, he's like, hang on. And he gets his like little beat counter up on his phone. And he's like, I want to count the beats per minute. And he was like testing the doctor because the doctor can tell. Like, I don't know if she could guess or if she could see it on the Doppler. And he was like, is it 165? And she's like, yeah. she's like, good guess. Oh, it's so funny because he uses that thing all the time because it's like a tempo, thing, like as a drummer. And it was cute. And he was like, wow, that's a really strong heartbeat. And the last time it was like 180, and he was like, that's like a fast march. And the doctor was like, yeah, like she really thinks that he's such a freak.
Fast march. That's hilarious.
Funny. Anyway, so yeah, he's very interested in beats per minute, which I never thought that would have been like something that he gets excited about. But so yeah, we scheduled all my appointments I have one at 16 weeks and then I have the 20-week, like, what's that one called?
Your body anatomy scan?
Anatomy scan. Yeah. And then we got the glucose test like scheduled for January. So
that one's really not that bad as long as you don't have to do the 3 hour. The 3 hour is the one that's the worst.
She said it was 5 minutes.
It's a 5-minute test.
Like you have to drink the drink in 5 minutes.
Oh, you have to drink the drink in 5 minutes, but then you have to sit there for a while and then they test your blood sugar afterwards. But
yeah,
they said an hour. Don't eat anything sugary before you go in.
Oh. Yeah, don't eat anything at all when you go in.
She said you have to eat protein.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews. Like I ate yogurt before I went in and it like spiked mine. I was like a point over and then I had to go do the 3 hour thing. And the 3 hour is the worst because you have to drink the dumb stuff 3 times and you have to take 4 blood draws because you take the one at the beginning and then one every hour. So it ends up being 4 total.
It is the worst. Also, don't let them give you like a flu shot or any shot while you're waiting to take your test because that will spike your blood sugar. They told me it wouldn't, but it definitely does. Any like trauma to your body, it spikes it.
Also, what happens if you do have gestational diabetes?
Like you have to eat like a special diet.
Yeah.
That's
It's the fail rate of that test though is like 9 out of 10. Like every woman fails it almost. It's ridiculous. It's obviously not a good like tried and true test. It's just like something that they have to do, but literally so many women fail it.
What do you
I
mean failed it? Like that they all
well,
have gestational diabetes?
no, you have to just go retake the 3 hour one, and I mean, but yeah, I failed I think 2 out of 5 times.
Yeah, I failed 2 out of 3 times. But
So
I didn't have just gestational diabetes. I just had to go take the 3 hour one. And
yeah,
the reason I failed the last one is because they convinced me to take a flu shot while I was waiting. They were kind of like, you should probably take this right now. And I was like, oh, is this like normal? I didn't know. And then so I got my flu shot. And then come to find out, if you just go to like literally diabetes.org, it will tell you that getting a vaccine will spike your blood sugar. And
Diabetes.com.
literally a quick Google search will tell you that it spikes your blood sugar. And I'm like, why did they not know that this would spike my blood sugar and make my test like just completely inconclusive? I'm like,
Right.
there's so many things that I'm like, this is so dumb. It's such a waste of time and it's such a waste of money. Ugh. Anyways, just FYI to any woman out there, don't get a vaccine while you're waiting for your glucose shot.
That's so weird that they even offer that. Like that seems like the wrong place, wrong time for that. I don't know. Anyways, it's also new to me. So everything they say, I'm just like, oh my gosh. It feels overwhelming how often you go to the doctor. Like it's basically like once every month, basically, right?
yeah.
Yeah. It's very fast though. And I said this before, but like when you're an IVF patient, they have you like under a microscope and you're like talking to your nurse every day and like you're at the clinic 24/7, like literally sometimes 4 days a week. Sometimes I'm there twice. Like I just felt it was just like nonstop. Like I felt like I lived at the clinic. And my nurse called me 2 days ago and I was like, wow, I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. And she's like, I know. And I was like, it's really weird being like a normal like patient where like you guys are not like checking in on me. And I was like, all my appointments are like the doctor comes in, she's like, sounds great, everything's good, do you have any questions? Like it's literally 3 minutes. Like Phil, she walked out of the room and Phil just looked at me and he keeps going, is that it? Because every like IVF appointment there was like so much concern and they're like, this this is alarming, so we need to test for this, and it's just like completely different. And I was like, and I was telling my IVF nurse and she started laughing and she's like, we get that feedback so much, like how much more time you get spent with when you're an IVF patient versus like just being a normal OB patient. And she's like, I literally hear that from like every single woman I work with, like how weird it is to like make the transition. So, I mean,
Sure.
in some ways it's nice, obviously, to like get away from it all, but it's just kind of funny. Okay, good. I've prepped this a couple of just like funny questions just because obviously we haven't podcasted in a while and like I feel like jumping into a serious topic would not feel authentic to us right now. I'm
You
just
just
kidding.
like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with serious, but I feel like people enjoy the random from
The
us.
lighthearted. Yeah. Okay. So I will explain this question after and why I think it's so funny and like why I thought of this. But think of this answer for yourself and then also try to think of one for each sister. But what is something that people would know about you only if they knew you super, super well? I know. I probably should have given you guys these questions ahead of time, shouldn't I? The other ones are not this hard to come up with an answer.
Um,
Well, I always say that you can't put me in a box because
Yeah.
everybody like pegs me to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And then I will for sure surprise you at some point in time. So I feel like people that know me really well know that because I get a extremely like narrow focused like perception from
Mhm.
people. And so I feel like that's the one thing that people would know if they know me well.
What I was going to say for you is that I feel like people misjudge your personality when they first meet you, or
Mhm.
like, and I don't even like go behind and try to explain it, because I think it's like helpful for people to get to know you on their own and like really appreciate, because I feel like you are that person that everybody wants in their corner. Like once they get to know you, this just turned into the compliment game. But like I was telling Phil, I was like, I really don't know what I would do if Tara ever like passed away. No, but I don't mean just for me, but like for our family and how close you are to mom and dad and like what you contribute to holidays and just like how you hold the family together and how close we are and like how much of a support system you are to me. And I feel like when people meet you, they think that, like you said, that you're like what's the word I'm looking for? Like assertive or like whatever, but you're assertive in work, but you're actually like incredibly kind, and you're more patient than anyone with your personality type than I've ever met. Like more patient than any personality type ever. Even people that don't know to be patient.
I was gonna say that you're very patient. Actually, even Isaac said that the other day. He's like, Tara is so patient. He's like, she's more patient than like anybody I know. And I was like, I'm glad you acknowledge that, because I agree. Because I mean, like, just like in like everyday life, I get really overwhelmed really quickly, but you don't let things frazzle you as quickly. You have more patience to like hear out the to like kind of understand the whole situation instead of take one thing, assume, and then like blow it out of proportion like I tend to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, I feel like you've grown a lot even in the way that you handle work situations too. Like there's this like funny inside joke when Tara gets mad that she starts clapping her hands. Well, it's not funny inside joke. It's something you have done. Yeah. And there's like an iconic moment, and I won't say his name. What should we call him instead? We'll call him like Bob. We had this like bigger blowout with an old agency, and he was like gaslighting us on this call and was just being like we're literally paying this person so much money to like do this specific task for us, and he asks a question and Tara's like, that's your job, that is your job.
There's nothing that infuriates me more,
oh my gosh,
than incompetence. Like I can't stand it when someone, well, first of all, don't tell me you told me something when you didn't.
Yes.
And so I can't stand liars, but like if you can't do your job, then don't try to come to me. Like I don't think that it's a lot to ask you to do your job. And it drives me nuts when people like, act like they're trying to give you such great feedback or, great results. And you're just like, no, that wasn't part of your job.
And I will say too, we talked about this a little bit, because I think the last time we podcast is when we got home from Dallas. And we didn't tell the Dallas story, and maybe we should sometime for like Patreon. But I was saying to Phil when we got home from that trip, so to make a really long story short, we went to this business in Dallas, and we thought we were going to do an investment with our dad, and it ended up being like more or less felt a little like a scam. So but what I thought was like really interesting, and even Whitney was better at this than I was, but you and dad were so like critical thinking with these people, and you thought to ask like certain questions, and you press them on it, and you press them on it hard, like in person, face to face, like especially, I mean, obviously dad was being so funny, but like dad is also like, and men don't take like things personally, so they can say things and it doesn't like deliver with a lot of emotion. But the whole time I was like, man, I would not have the balls to like ask those questions or make those comments, but you do it in such like a respectful way that I feel like you gain respect from people so easily or so quickly, because like I don't know, like whereas I was like really nervous the whole time we were in there, and like I don't think I asked a single question. I was just there for the ride, but you guys were so good at, and I was watching, and I told Phil, I was like, I think I'm so glass half full and try to see the good in people that like I don't think like, oh, this person might actually be a scammer. Like I think I'm just
well,
like loving being like, oh, well, how do we look at the bright side of this? But there was none.
There was none.
I initially walked into that was like really open mind. And then when we saw the warehouse, I was like, this is weird. And
Yeah.
then it
Oh
just
my
got
gosh.
weirder.
We need to save this for its own episode
I
because
know.
it is wild. It is so wild.
It would
I
be
would
so
have to like
fun.
write an outline of it to remember it all at this point because it was like nonstop red flags. And I was like, abort, abort, abort.
Well, and
Best
we
was it was fresh in your mind, and you told Sarah like the Monday we got back, and it was like an hour and a half long story.
It was such a long story. I actually
Sarah
told
was like,
Inways,
"Oh wow, this is really
I told
wild."
Inways about it one day because they came over to swim and we got done and it was probably about the same amount of time. I might have shortened it a little bit. And Heidi was like, "You're the best storyteller." She's like, "If I were to tell that story, I would have been like, we went to see this warehouse and we got scammed. But you gave so many details. It's so interesting and exciting to listen to." It's so funny.
Oh,
I
I
was
never
like,
finished my 3 clap comment.
oh yeah, what
I was
was it?
gonna say is you have perfected the art of being direct, because even yesterday we had this whole debacle with a supplier, and Tara was like, the listing went up and then it already got taken down. She's like, I need to take a breath or I'm gonna 3 clap on these guys. It's like 6 a.m., like so early. I was dying. So that's like become like a funny inside joke now. But anyways, um, was there something you would like to add to all these compliments we've just been showering over you?
I mean, I think I was just going to say, I think it's accurate. I didn't mean the compliments, but I was going to say that,
She's like, all of it's true.
um, but no, I think that like, for whatever reason, I mean, it's been going on since literally high school that I get pegged as like all business,
Yeah.
like, I think people don't think that I have like I don't have like a soft side. And so
Yeah.
I think that surprises people when they meet me because I think they're expecting something totally different. And
Yeah.
so that's why I always just say like, that's why it drives me nuts when people that sort of know me or kind of know me, like all of a sudden try to have this perception of me that's not accurate. It's
Mhm.
like, because it triggers me because in college, that's what happened. I felt like everybody was trying to tell me I was this certain person and like Tara would never do that. And and it was just like, don't tell me what I will and will not do. Like it just drove me nuts. Like don't, and so that's why I always just say like, don't put me in a box because I'm not just one dimensional. So
I could do a full episode on perceptions of things people have said about me versus what they actually think once they meet me or like get to know me. But a lot of it happened in college and a lot of it happened with like church people, which is like really odd.
I think people with you, I think that the perception is that you're kind of a goofball or like
Yeah.
that you're really funny and like that and that you're not you can't be serious and I think that that's a piece of you that until people like your true like close friends know that but I feel like right off the bat that wouldn't be people's general perception.
Right. I'm actually very deep, you guys, just in case. These wells run very, very deep. Okay, Whitney. So we'll do Whitney next and then we'll do mine. So what is something people wouldn't know about you unless they knew you really, really well?
I feel like people assume I am shy, which I am. But if you get to know me, I am more of a goofball. I feel like I am more silly than most.
Yeah.
I would say with you that you're way more talkative than people would assume, but it's more so when you're comfortable with people.
Yeah.
And 2, you're funnier than people would assume.
I really am. I really am.
You pull out these one-liners. You're like mom. Like you surprise us. Like it's like all of a sudden out of nowhere, you're like, bam, and you just hit us with something really good. And you're like, I'm impressed with that one. I am.
A lot of times I'll like say my jokes under my breath and then Kate will hear them and repeat them louder. And everybody was like, oh, Kate, she's so funny.
I have a friend, my friend Sam. he like tries to be funny for himself. Like he does not say things loud enough. And he's the same way. You're not the same personality type at all, but he will say stuff under his breath and I always hear it. And it is so funny. Like if you're paying attention to things that he says. So that reminds me of Sam. Phil kind of does that too, but Phil also says things for shock value a lot of the time. And that's not my humor, like at all. Like my humor is like slapstick happy, and Phil's is like, what can I say that'll make people be like, oh my gosh, Phil, like you're like laughing, but you're like, oh my word, did you just say that? And then he thinks that's funny, or anything to do with like cuss words or like penis. You know what I mean? Like those are his like go-tos. So okay, what I was gonna say about Whitney is I think when people expect an introvert to be like reclusive, you're actually very down for the hangs because you're a quality timer, which is something obviously that I've gotten to know over time with you, that like you appreciate like someone just like sitting on the couch with you or being like, oh, will you ride to Target with me or something like that, which I feel like a lot of people that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Introverted, sorry, just like truly actually want to be alone and like are like, no, I don't need the company. And that's something about your introverted nature that I feel like is unique and something that's like admirable, because you are actually like more social than people give you credit for.
It's admirable to be a extroverted introvert.
Well, no, I don't mean it like that. It's not like people that need time to themselves are worse. That sounded, I don't know. That sounded not the way I needed it to come out.
I know. I'm deflecting because I feel uncomfortable when people say things. So Kait.
Well, here, let me tell you what mine was.
Oh, yes.
You guys will know it, but it's not serious at all. But the other day, our friend Rachel was in town and we do like a progressive dinner with Britt and Sam, because we usually, like if I'm cooking, we'll eat here, and Eleanor, their baby, will come over. She's 1. She's not really a baby, like 1.5. And then when they need to go put her down, then we'll go to Britt and Sam's for dessert or vice versa, whatever. And so Britt made dessert and she's dishing it. And she's like, Kait, do you want an extra bowl for your ice cream? And you guys know this, right? About my dessert preference. And I was like, see, that's something you would only know unless you were my best friend or my family member. Like she was like, do you want ice cream? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, do you want an extra bowl? And I was like, do you even have to ask? And she just started laughing. And I was dying laughing. I don't like my dessert to mix. So if it's like it was a hot fudgy, like chocolatey brownie, and I don't want a cold ice cream scoop on top of it, making it like hard. I want it to be hot and then like eat the ice cream in a different bite. Or like when people make Pizookie cookies or like skillet cookies and they put the ice cream on it and then it just melts and becomes soup, that grosses me out. So I always get ice cream on
the side. Ice cream and the cookie in the same bite though, or you eat them separate?
With a skillet cookie, I'd probably eat them in the same bite, but not with the brownie. I was just kind of enjoying them as 2 separate entities.
So with the brownie, you ate it like 1 bite of ice cream and then a bite of brownie and then back and forth?
Yeah, I think maybe I just don't like ice cream with my dessert. Like I appreciate that it's like a accoutrement, you know? Is that the right word? Like accompaniment?
Is that what they're
I've
called?
never heard of an accoutrement.
Isn't that like a French word for like accompaniment?
I don't know. That was a new word for me.
But I don't like, I want like the hot, like fudgy dessert, and I don't want it to get like, I don't know why, but it just made me laugh when she said that, because she like, obviously Britt's like my closest girlfriend and she like knows that so well. But we also eat a lot of meals together, so that's something you get to know.
I think that
Jake and Coda would know that too, obviously, but
because you like nice things or like designer bags, I think that there can be an initial perception that you're superficial. And I think that that's like the least true thing about you.
A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about being like stressed about money. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, feel like I'm drowning in medical bills. And it's like, you could sell some of your bags. It's like, yeah, it's a thought. I actually could. The difference now, most of my bags like obviously have value, but the crazy thing about Chanel is they raise prices by 30% like every 6 months. So the bag that I have is now going to be like, it's going to cost like $12,000.
That's so dumb.
Isn't that crazy? And I won't say what I paid, but it was less than half of that. So that's just insane. But I also, at the time I was buying bags, I had a lot more disposable income than I do at this point. I haven't bought a bag in a really long time. Like, I feel like my style, like I can still style things, you know, when I'm like putting outfits together for Royal and Race. But when I'm personally getting ready lately, it's like I told Tara, I was like, I wore those Aerie sets all summer. I don't think I wore anything else besides the same four Aerie sets over and over and over again because I don't know. I just didn't feel good. Like, I feel like when you don't feel good too, like you're just like, what's going to like fit and feel comfortable instead of being like,
if you're not going anywhere too, it's hard to want to get ready. Like,
yeah,
why would you get dressed up in a nice top if you're going to sit home all day? You know,
right.
like, so it's just like that kind of stuff. I feel like the work from home stuff is harder because you don't really have a reason. Like, I
Right.
was looking at my closet and I'm like, it's been so long since I've bought stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and so I was like, I really need to revamp for fall. But I was like, it's been so long since I've actually bought new things to
Yeah.
wear because
Phil, when he wakes up, well, because like, I don't know if this is like TMI, but he sleeps in his underwear. I guess most men do. He wakes up and puts on jeans. Isn't that weird? Like, like I obviously, when I come out to eat breakfast, I'm in like my PJs because I slept in PJs, but Phil will put on like what he wore the night before. So he'll put on like jeans and a t-shirt. And I'm always like, it's so weird to me that you lounge in denim. Like, it's so strange. The first thing you wake up in the morning and he's like, why? These jeans are comfortable. And I'm like, regardless, like put some joggers on. He's like, what does it matter to you? And I'm like, I don't know. It just feels wrong that you're like walking around the house in jeans.
Brian has a pair of shorts that are like they're too big around the waistband, and when he puts his cell phone in them, then it like pulls the shorts down really far. And so like he comes out in those most days, and I'm just like, you really need to buy yourself a new pair of shorts. It looks ridiculous. They're like half sagging down his butt every day.
Okay.
Wait, I didn't say your perception. What I was gonna say is I feel like like when people first meet you, since you're so extroverted, I feel like a lot of extroverts get pinged as maybe flighty or maybe not like as clean because they're just like moving on from one fun thing to the next fun thing. And so like I always picture like my friends in college, like their rooms were always like a bomb that went off. And that's actually the opposite of what you are. You're very organized. You're the cleanest of the three of us. And like your couch has vacuum lines and your closet is organized by like length of sleeve and like you're very, very organized and very cleanly. And even though you are a ball of fun to hang out with.
Wow, that's such a nice compliment because I feel like I really have to strive for organization. Like I've said this a lot. I don't have the natural like business organizational mind like Tara does, and really Whitney, I feel like you have it too, because I'm not like a list maker, and I literally survive off of having a good memory. Like if today, as a prime example, a customer messaged me about changing her address yesterday. And I literally didn't even like flag the message or anything. And then like at 2:00, I was like, oh, I need to change that girl's address. And I literally like went through and found it just because it like I like happened to remember it. Most people would do it in the moment or also make a note of it somewhere.
Heaven forbid.
It's like, I'll remember it later. What'd you say?
So heaven forbid you put it in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I don't even know how to use a spreadsheet, to be perfectly honest.
We were saying that the perfect example of your brain was when we went to the Magic in Chicago or whatever that thing was called. And Whit and I were like, why don't we like go see the vendors like up and down the aisle and just make like a very organized way so we get them all and see them all. But you had gotten there before us or something like that. And you were like, okay, you guys, I want to show you this one and that one and this one. And there's another one over here. And we were like, we did so many zigzags around that floor. I was like, I don't even know where I'm at anymore. And Whit goes, this is the perfect depiction of Kait's brain. This is like what goes on inside.
I'd like already eyeballed them and scanned them. And I was like, that one's not worth going to. Let's go this one.
I feel like so like we used to have to take the strengths finder thing in business. So like at State Farm, we had to take it. I had to take it in college. So one of my strengths is strategic. And like in my brain, what that is you like have a beginning and then you can see the end and you succinctly figure out the most succinct, efficient way to get to the end. So my brain, I have a linear path, whereas Kate's, it is exact opposite of that. It's like she just zigzags, but we still somehow get to the end. It's just in a very different path than what I would have chosen. But it's interesting. I mean, we all have different ways we think through things, and that's good because it all helps us come together with different ideas and stuff. But it's just kind of funny to see how her brain works versus how mine would.
Me and Tara also like verbally process on phone calls, like with work. And so I feel like Sarah has like learned to just like hear us talk. And then at the end, she'll be like, okay, so what email are we sending on Wednesday? Like it'll be like 45 minutes later of us talking about like what's selling well and like these stats and like, oh, this is actually interesting data and has nothing to do with sending the email, but somehow it correlates in our minds still of how to strategize properly. So speak of the devil, my friend Brett just texted me. Okay. The next question I had was, okay, is there something you can think of that you've never told your sisters, either of us? I genuinely can't think of anything because I feel like we're all pretty honest with each other.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, at least. I'm sure later I'll be like, oh, but it's probably not even anything worth telling if you don't know it already.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not recent.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even have anything juicy. Okay.
That was a bummer of a question.
Sorry. Okay, this question is funny. What's one thing you've never gotten over or forgiven the sister that has wronged you for? I was going to use when I really wanted an Arnold Palmer from Chick-fil-A and I texted her to bring it during the pandemic. And I was like so thirsty because we were like 3 employees when we normally had 55 and we're like shipping 400 packages. And Tara gets back with Chick-fil-A and I'm like, where's my Arnold Palmer? And she's like, oh, I forgot it. And I was like, and then you're like, no, she's never going to let me forget that I forgot it. That's a stupid example, but
probably the time when this is vice versa. I was gonna say probably the time when I got you a coffee, but I ordered it wrong.
I know. There is nothing worse than when someone's like, can I do a Starbucks run? And then they bring your coffee and it's wrong. Isn't that like that's like the worst feeling. Like
I ordered you Chipotle and they didn't put enough pico on it for you.
Yeah. I sound like such a picky eater, but I'm really not.
Oh,
that's so funny. You know what I was going to say for the last question, just so it's not like a total bust? I was going to tell you, Tara, that I really like your hair dark.
Really? I just scheduled an appointment to go later. I literally, after the pumpkin festival picture, I messaged Crystal and I was like, enough's enough. Like, I need to get back some like money pieces, just like dimension. I just feel like there's no dimension. And so I sent her a picture and I'm like, every time I see this picture of my hair, I just love it. And so she was like, we can do that.
What picture is it?
I'll show him.
Well, it's funny. I've never told you this, not because I think it would offend you, but Joe and he always like asks how you girls are. And he always asks what your hair is like. Like he'll be like, is Whitney's hair shorter? Or like did Tara color her hair? And he's like, oh, Tara's always pretty light, right? Like he was like, her hair's really caramel. And so the other day I showed him a picture when I was in his chair that your hair, like your ombre has grown out. And he was like, her hair is so pretty dark. And I was like, I know, I don't think she would ever go as dark as me, but I think it looks really nice. And he's like, you should tell her. And I was like, yeah, I feel like, but I don't want you to ever think that I think your hair looks bad if it's not that color. So that's why I've never said it.
Well, I don't hate it. I just feel like it needs something to give it some like structure. But every time I see, can you see that?
Oh yeah, your hair does look, but that's more blonde than it is like caramely.
Yeah, it's like it had caramel in it, but it just I think like just having some like strands in the front and stuff. We back then we were doing a caramel, a blonde, and then just my normal.
Yeah.
Like every time I see that picture, I like how my hair looks and I like how it's styled too. I'm like, I don't know what I was doing back then, but I like it. So
I
anyway,
think it's a smaller curling iron barrel, like we were talking about the other day.
yeah, it might be. Actually, I think back then it was bigger, but well, no, well, I don't know. Anyway,
Your part looks down the middle in that picture, though, kind of.
yeah, it's still the same. I
Oh,
think my bangs were longer because I had more of like a kind
oh,
of what do they call them? A window
Curtain.
curtain bang, window pane bang. So anyway, that was actually at Solani Steakhouse from years ago
well,
when
I
we
was
went.
there. I feel like I probably took that picture.
That one we went with Brett and Carly, but I have been there with you.
She's
We
like,
had
you're wrong again. I keep saying
we um we had gone there, we had gone out there for like our anniversary and Brett and Carly came along and I was pregnant with Britain, I think it was. And
one time we went to Solani Steakhouse and it was like me, you, and mom and dad and Brian, and that was it. Like Phil wasn't there, right?
I don't even think Brian was there. I think it was just you, me, mom, and dad.
Oh, and
We
I
sat
think
at
I
like
was
a
like,
four-person table and we had some kind of corn, like creamed corn or charred corn or something. It was like fantastic.
hmm,
Every meal I've had there has been amazing. Like
yeah,
I've never been disappointed. Brian still talks about their scallops.
that's funny. Okay. What is one piece of parental advice or just advice you've been given recently that you've held on to? Or it could be you heard it a long time and you have always held on to it.
Well, I just read this on someone's Instagram and it was just making me think about it. But one of the things that I feel like I have tried to instill in my kids since they started school is that I want them to do their best, but I'm not looking for perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't want them to be in a bazillion sports just for the sake of being in sports. Like I want them to still be able to have time to like run around outside and like sit at the table with us and all these things because I feel like there's so much like the meme I was reading basically was saying like you have to, you know, do this to get in the best preschool, that which then gets you into the best, you know, elementary school, which then gets you in the best high school, and then gets you into the best college and like all this stuff. And I feel like there's so much pressure academically and extracurricular for kids that it's just gotten out of hand. And so I just feel like kids are exhausted and I feel like that they're under a ton of pressure. And like sometimes I feel like people are living vicariously through their kids and they just want to be kids. So I just want my kids like, I just realized like now being an adult that an A student, while it looks good on paper and you're like, oh, my kid's on the honor roll, doesn't really mean much in the scheme of life. Like C students can still be extremely successful people. Like it doesn't really mean like if you think about how little your high school career means in the rest of your life,
Yeah.
I just don't want my kids to have that pressure growing up. I want them to just be able to know that they're still like there's still value even if they aren't a straight A, you know?
This is such a hot take, but I was listening to a podcast yesterday and they were talking about college and just like the idea of it. And there was like three dads that were all saying that they were, if their kid wanted to do STEM, they would pay for them to go to college, or if they had like an actual plan of like what they wanted to do and how they were going to use their degree, then they would pay for it. But if the kid's like, they used a fashion merchandising degree as an example. And I was like, wow, what a slam. Because that's my degree. I actually can't even remember. My degree is even more generalized and it's just like an emphasis on fashion merchandising. I can't even remember what it's called. But they were like, if you want to go into school for like something really general or that you won't really use, like you should think about it longer. And they were talking about how Israel has like a gap year where you have to go in the military for a year, and every single 18-year-old has to like serve for a full year, women and men. Like And then once they're done, then they can go to school or, decide if they want to do like a trade of some sort and whatnot. But I was like, honestly, it's kind of a good idea because so many people have said that. Like, I'm not saying don't go to college or like education is a waste, but like so many people have said like that they don't use their degree. And kids are like, think about what you were like when you were 18. And like, I didn't know what I want to do with my life. You're so young, and yet you make this massive decision. I don't know. It is kind of crazy when you think about it, being like, there's so much pressure to be like, you won't be successful unless you get a college degree, which I feel like is less the case now because a lot of companies don't seem to look at that.
I just don't know how people afford college. I
Oh,
mean,
I know.
college has gotten so ridiculously expensive. I'm like, I don't, even if you did student loans, which obviously you can do, like, how are you not like 60 and still paying them off? I mean, some of
People
these
probably
universities
are.
are absolutely insane.
I know. I went
Well,
to
and like
community
think about it
college.
too, like what is it actually preparing you for? Like I
Yeah.
went to college and got a painting degree. Like what was that preparing me for? Absolutely nothing. And it was like unless I was gonna go get my master's in painting, they didn't really move into like here's how you show your artwork um in showrooms and stuff or art galleries. Like they didn't go over any of that. They just essentially like would grade your paintings. And like this isn't really helpful and this is such a waste of a degree because am I painting? No, I'm not. I have no idea how to even make that a career. Also, when you're 18, you're not presented with here are the options, all the many options of jobs, and here are the degrees to get those jobs. Like you're not presented with that. You're just like, okay, what degree are you going to be announcing
I
or whatever?
know. It's like that's what I'm saying. It's like so much pressure on kids. Like the way that our society
Yeah.
is set up is kind of, it seems kind of odd that that's the way that we're doing it. I know that's like I said, it's not like it's probably not a popular take because it sounds like I'm like discounting education. So maybe we should move on. It's
Well,
like,
I don't think that necessarily education is bad. I mean, obviously kids being out on their own teaches them a lot of things. You know, it's they have to manage their time, they have to learn how to grocery shop, they have to learn how to do their laundry on their own, keep their place clean, make sure that they can, pay their bills. Like I think all of that stuff is those are valuable life lessons that you're not going to get if you're not out of the house at some point in
right.
time. And so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing per se. I just what I think is hard is that so many kids are like stressed to the max trying to get into the right school or trying to have all these extra things. Like I mean, when we were in high school, I wasn't worried about like what was on my college entrance like what I was putting in. I wasn't in all these extra things just so that I could say that I did them for college. Like I just feel like it's so much pressure on high
Yeah.
schoolers to make sure that they can get into the correct school. So,
Mhm.
Yeah,
and
and I want to be clear that I am not discounting the fact that I didn't learn much out of my college career. I'm just saying I feel like it could have been like set up a different way where
Yeah.
when you're talking with your admissions counselor or your academic counselor, there should be like options of like jobs and like the trajectory of how to get there
Right.
instead of just being like, okay, tell me what degree you want and then here's how you get that degree, these are the classes. Like I feel like there should be a little bit more guidance because I felt like the only thing I was good at was painting and that's what I went for because I was like, I'm good at painting, let's go for it. Instead, I had no idea what I could even use the degree for, but I had no like I was like, I'll figure that out when I get there. Instead, I ended up having a design brain. Like we could have moved in that path, but I ended up learning how to do that on YouTube and saved myself another, 30 grand on a degree.
well, I think the
I was
hard
gonna
part
say,
too is that like, I got a business degree. You can take a business degree in 50,000 different ways. And
yeah.
so as a counselor, how do you sit down with a kid and be like, okay, what would you like to do? Well, I want to do business. Okay, well, do you want to be in insurance or do you want to be in like finance or do you want, you know what I mean? Like you can go so many different ways with that.
That's
And then
true.
there's,
But present the options.
but
Like,
it, like when you go out to actually find a job, that process is overwhelming because if you do have a business degree, it's like you're reading these descriptions and you're like, do I want to do data entry for, insurance work on, not really. No, I don't want to, but you know what I mean? Like business in general is like very like wide and broad. So none of them sound exciting.
I know. I almost feel like it would be more helpful for you to do an internship or like that gap year they were talking about, like
Mhm.
from the once you graduate and had like a year where you're like, maybe I want to discover what it's like to be a plumber. I don't know. Like plumbers
Dude,
can,
at this point, trade jobs are so like
I know.
coveted because they're always needed and you don't have to go through tons of college. Like
Right.
you just have automatic job stability, you know?
And then you don't get like stuck in a career or a job that you like really hate. And then you're like, oh crap, well, finding like starting over and finding a new job, like Tara said, is so overwhelming. You're like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay here for a while. And I actually used to feel that way when I worked for Nordstrom because I don't know why I felt this way. I'm sure there was like a lot more opportunity, but I worked at a remote store and Nordstrom is known for like when you climb the ladder, they want to move you. So they want you to go to Atlanta or they want you to go to Florida. And so like as you grow in leadership, they want you to be mobile. And so I was like, well, I'm stuck in this store because Phil's not mobile and I'm not going to move from Nashville. And so I remember feeling like, okay, this is the only career path that I can have. And I'm like, why did I think that like my only job idea at 22 was that I could be like a retail store manager? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of silly that I just was like, I think when you're young, you like get stuck in this like treadmill of thought where you're like, okay, I'm here forever. And that's really not the case at
Well,
all.
it is kind of hard to figure out. You're like, okay, what am I good at?
Right.
Am I good at this? What do I enjoy? Like, it's really hard to figure that out. And then you're like, okay, if I'm not doing that job, I feel like, especially kids these days, they want to make sure that they're doing something they love because it's not worth it to them. And I'm like, it doesn't always work out that way because, like, I worked at State Farm in a job that I wouldn't have necessarily chose, but I actually really enjoyed it because I was good at it.
One
And
thing I will give Gen Z credit for is that they know how to make money on the internet and doing it from home.
they're
It is
really good at dancing.
it is astounding how well Gen Zers know how to make money as influencers on TikTok and stuff. Like I've been on social media, with a business for like 10 years and I've never gotten a brand deal. I don't know if I've like gone after it really hard. I wouldn't even know how to if I wanted to. You know what I mean? Like they have something that we don't have. There's a finesse to Gen Z that I don't understand when it comes to that. And I think have you guys all seen like those jokes about millennials about how we're like, oh, do you want to like back your car out? Okay, like let me move out of the way. Oh, if you just want to back over me, it's fine. Like I didn't get out of the way in time. Actually, if you just want to run me over again, like it's totally fine. I was in your way. And talking about like that's how like millennials handle everything because we're like too afraid to like hurt people's feelings. And they were saying the difference between millennials and Gen Zers is Gen Zers are like shameless and going after like what they want. And I was like, I actually kind of envy that quality because I am not like that. Like I don't ask for favors. I don't just ask the question to see if I'll get something for free. Like there is no like shamelessness in me in that way at all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
Well, the other piece of parenting advice that Heidi gave me before we had Brecken that I feel like has always been helpful is to essentially like live your life and bring the baby along. Like don't be meaning like don't live your life around the baby's nap schedule. Like
yeah.
if you're out and about and the kid has to go to bed, like put them in bed a little bit later or let them nap in the car or whatever, because it ends up making them so much more flexible with travel or just like being out and about. And not to mention that it makes your life more cumbersome to try to make sure that your entire life is scheduled around like the morning nap, the afternoon nap, and bedtime. And I think that was the one thing that was like super helpful because we drug our kids everywhere. If they went to bed late, they went to bed late. If they went to missed a nap, they missed a nap. Like it just, I feel like they have been very easy to travel with and take places because we just drug them and just said like, okay, well, if they have to nap in the car, they nap in the car, you know? And so I feel like that's made them versatile
Yeah.
when it's come to life as a whole. So that's my other piece of advice that I've heard.
What?
I heard something the other day that was the phrase, it was love your kids for who they are, not who you want them to be.
Oh.
And I feel like that's very smart because I feel like as a parent, you have a tendency to kind of project on what you want them to be. And instead of just being kind of proud for who they are or what they're doing. And another thing that is true too is your like what you say to them is how they think about themselves. So kind of are how they kind of build themselves into who they are. And so be very careful about what you say to them or what you say about them. And I want to make sure, especially when I'm talking to my kids, I want to make sure it's very encouraging. And then when I am like reprimanding them over something, I try to always explain the why behind it. And then make sure that they understand like this is the expectation, this is the why behind it. And it's not that they're like a bad person or whatever. No, I'm not saying like when I sit down and like put one of them in timeout, I'm like, okay, this is why you're in timeout. Like I have to give it a second because a lot of times like it's irritating. You need to take a minute so that you're not speaking out of anger. But then I explain like, okay, can you tell me why you're in timeout? Oftentimes they're like, I don't know. And then I'm like, okay, I need to take another minute because that just irked me. But anyways, just trying to explain it so they understand it is helpful.
I always say you like parenting is hard because you're like, what am I going to do now that's going to put my kids in therapy later? Like, you know, you're trying to keep from creating trauma or create like you don't want them to be looking back on life and being like, well, I had this negative experience because of, and this like shaped the way that I thought about myself or felt about myself or whatever. And so I think it's just, you know, it's so hard because with parenting, you're just doing the absolute best that you can. And unlike so many times that there's underlying circumstances that are going on that have really nothing to do with the kids, it's just like you're stressed about work or you're stressed about your relationship or whatever it is that's going on in addition to that. And the kids sometimes just get the brunt of that emotion. And so I think it's hard because you realize that the reality of you raising kids is that you're still kind of a kid raising a kid, no matter how old you are, because you're still growing and changing and learning and you're just doing the best that you absolutely can with the tools that you've been given up to this point. And you just hope that you know, do it somewhat decent.
Yeah.
You're also faced with a lot of your own triggers as well, like things that you didn't know triggered you or whatever. So you're having to like process through that without projecting that onto your kid as well. And that probably is one of the hardest things because I'm not one to acknowledge my emotions in the moment. As you all know, I'll like 6 months down the road, I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I felt about that or something. And then you're like, you have to figure out how to work through it. But yeah, oftentimes I feel like, especially kids with their emotions running so high all the time, you kind of have to catch yourself so that you're not also meeting their roller coaster of emotions with your own. And you have to somehow figure out how to stay emotionally stable, or if you're not, kind of remove yourself a little bit so you're not projecting on them because they're little. As soon as they calm down, then they're fine. But like you don't want to walk away like screaming and yelling at them.
Right. This has nothing to do with parental advice. It's just better, like good advice. I feel like I've gotten so much better at this, but then there's times where I'll spiral and you guys know certain situations that have happened like this. But one happened when you guys were in town a couple months ago and I like couldn't get over it for like 30 minutes. And then I finally got over it when we were sitting on the porch, remember? Anyways, you guys are like, I'm well aware.
Like, please move on.
Oh, but I was gonna say someone, I don't know if Whitney said it or mom or maybe it was dad, but he said other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And I feel like as a people pleaser or a recovering people pleaser, I feel like I'm better than I once was the older I get. But like when someone I think is upset with me or like their tone was weird and I'm like, oh, did I do something and they're acting weird towards me? Like, if I know in my heart I've treated this person with like love and respect and there's no reason for them to respond in a certain way, like I've just had to get to a point where I can't let what I think their perception of me bother me because I know who I am as a person and that like that's all that really should matter. But I think it's hard when you are a people pleaser. It's not even necessarily that I want to be liked, it's that I don't like to be misperceived. Is that a word? Misperceived?
Yeah.
Anyways, that people get a misperception of me of not being kind or like that they heard what I said wrong or whatever. That like bugs the crap out of me. And I was dying laughing because you guys, I think I texted this to you, but that trend on TikTok that's um, you know, how they're like, how often is your husband thinking about the Roman Empire? And like these guys are like randomly answering and saying that they think about it all the time. And you're like, what? So they're now flipping it and is like, what are women's Roman Empire? And I saw one on TikTok that was like, it's your ex-best friend. And I was like, literally, that is me. Like every friendship that I don't have anymore, I think all the time. And like what went wrong and why we're not still friends or why they won't message me back or whatever it is. And I have a friend from college that we talk about all the time. We're like, we don't know where she is or what happened or like why we're not friends. Like there was never like a conversation that happened. Like we're just like not friends anymore. And I was like, that is literally me. Like I stew on my ex-best friends.
I saw a meme, or not a meme, but a gal that was like, the men think about the Roman Empire and they're like, what's the women equivalent? And she's like, murder. She's like, it could be about you, how you're gonna get murdered, how maybe like true crime podcasts, maybe about how you're gonna murder someone else. She's like, but murder. What do you think?
I love
exactly true. I think about death on a regular basis, especially every time I go over a bridge. But like,
I don't think about death. I think about like prison culture. To me is so fascinating. Like literally this morning, I was watching a prison documentary.
You say I think about prison.
I guess I don't think about prison a lot, but I love watching shows about prison, like culture. I don't know why. It's like actually really sad to think about. But like I was watching this documentary about women, excuse me, who are like pregnant in prison. And then like when they go give birth, if they're not actively like laboring and pushing, they're shackled to their bed. And I was just like, this is so sad and inhumane. Like, leave her unshackled. Where's she gonna go? She's like pushing a baby out. Like, so sad. I mean, I get like if she's like an axe murderer and she's having a baby, like maybe you can't trust it, but still, it's like crazy. But I was watching a whole thing about then like when they go back to prison, they can go on like walks with little strollers. Like the prison have like strollers for them, but they have to be like with a guard because there's people in the prison that may have done something to a child. Does that make sense? Like their crime was against a child. So it's not necessarily like the mom hurting her own child. It's like other inmates for their protection.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so sad.
This is kind of off topic, but can we talk about women who are pregnant that have like very vivid dreams? Like Terry, do you remember when you were pregnant and you would have like these crazy vivid dreams? I swear to you, Kait, by the end of your pregnancy, you will have a dream that you gave birth to a puppy at least once. Like you will at least once. I had that with every single pregnancy. I would have a dream where I gave birth to a litter of puppies every single time.
So weird.
You're like, why is my child a puppy? I'm supposed to like love this puppy baby, but it's not my baby.
I've actually had that dream, but I wasn't pregnant at the time. My horror dreams are always, I've said this before, I think, that I'm in a class that I did not show up to all semester. And I'm like, why am I such a delinquent person? And I know nothing about this class. I have that dream like at least once a month. And then the other one is I'm at a pool party and I'm topless. And I can't figure out why I don't have a top. And why I have like the audacity to have these huge boobs and that I don't like have a top. Like it's so weird. It's like
I have the dream where I show up to class and I didn't realize I was even in the class and there was like a test or something that I wasn't prepared for. And I'm like, where have I been all semester? I have that dream often, actually. What does that say? Is somebody like a dream interpreter? We need to.
I know.
Come on,
I have a dream on a very regular basis that I am in like a public restroom and the stalls aren't very high, so everyone can see in at you when you're going to the bathroom. And like in all different fashions. Like it's like someone will be in the restroom while I'm trying to go to the bathroom. There's like no walls to the stall. Like the stall isn't, it's just like literally hits right here. So when people walk in, you're just like, hey. Like,
maybe that's like to interpret. Maybe it's like a fear of being vulnerable, because like how vulnerable are you on a potty where someone's watching you?
That's a weird dream. I could count probably 10 different dreams that I've had like that in some capacity. It's so weird.
I also have a dream too where I'm like talking, but when I talk, I've got like bubble gum in my mouth so much that I can't talk around it and I have to like pull it out and it won't, like it's just never ending. Like I can't get this bubble gum out of my mouth. Like I have that. That's a recurring dream for me.
I actually have that kind of dream, or if I have to pee and I'm dreaming and I keep going pee and then I still have to pee. Do you have those ones?
Yeah. Where you have to like pee, but
like you
in real life you have to pee.
In real life you have to pee. Well, Tara's like, no, I'm like, okay, let me break it down. In real life you have to pee. And then, but in your dream, you have to pee and you keep going to the bathroom. But then when you leave the bathroom, you're like, oh my gosh, I still have to pee. So then you go back to the bathroom. You don't have this dream?
But I've had tons of dreams where it's like I'm trying to talk to somebody or like yell at them and I cannot like yell. Like it's like I can't get the words out. It's like my voice is just like I can't, it's like I can't get any words. And it makes me so angry.
Maybe you have bubble gum in your mouth.
Okay, should I ask one more question or two more?
Well, I was going to say the one snippet of wisdom that Dad gave me in regards, like what you said, it's none of your business thing. Dad told me years ago when I was younger that like, he said, if you realized how little people were worried about your life because they're worried about their own, you'll quit worrying what people think about you. And I was like, it's so life-changing when you think about that, because he's like, the reality of it is think how often you think about others. You don't worry about what they're doing. You don't worry about what they're wearing. You don't think about them in any capacity because you're worried about yourself. So he's like, why would anyone else be sitting and worried about you? And so he's like, once you learn that, you'll quit worrying about what people think of you. And I was like, that is so true.
Dad told me early high school, I think it was, he said, Whitney, you don't chase after the boys. The boys will chase after you. You just let them come to you, because that shows that you respect yourself. And they want to chase after a girl that respects herself. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
And then we never had any boyfriends.
And then the first boy that came after me, I married.
Same, literally same. Hey, it's actually a good theory. It's a good way to keep your kids out of trouble in high school.
Honestly, I felt like that was really good information. So I tried not to chase after any little boys and let them come to me. And 90% of the time they did not. So
yeah. I was going to say, we were at a church thing in like Indiana, and it was like, we were in this like weird side room. I don't know if it was the fellowship hall, or I just have this vivid memory of you and I complaining because I was like in the third grade and I had like a zit on my face. And you said something like negative about something like your hair. And Dad was like, nobody's thinking about the zit on your face because they're thinking about the zit on theirs. I was like, that's so real. Like, this is coming from the man who like literally could care less what anyone thinks of him. So it makes sense that this advice is like so valid, because he's like, and I've said this before, I envy that quality about Dad so much. Like, he just is who he is, and you either take it or leave it. And honestly, I feel like the world would probably be very different if we all felt that way, because not like that Dad doesn't have empathy or anything, because he's incredibly thoughtful and he's like so generous in all the things, that he deeply cares for people. but he really does not care what people think about him, like, or what he says or what he does. He just like lives his life the way that he wants to. And Phil is actually very similar to that now that I think about that.
Yeah, Phil is.
That's how Isaac is too.
Yeah, there's something about that.
Yep.
That's funny. Okay, should I ask one more question or two?
It probably depends on how long the questions are.
Well, I'll just ask one more. It's another really kind of like sweet question that we can just wrap up the podcast. It can be recent or it can be like in the past. I think mine's going to be recent, but what's a memory together as siblings that you really cherish?
Honestly, my favorite was the Dallas trip as of late. I think that was one of like the most special times that I think that we've gotten to share together, because it was such an unusual situation to have all three of us like without our kids, without our husbands, and just with dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that was like super fun, because I was like, when's the last time that we just sat in a room for like 4 straight hours and just chatted? Like we haven't.
And what's kind of nice too is when we went down there, it was like you said, without kids or without husbands. So it's almost like we reverted back to like who we actually were before kids and husbands. And like I reverted back to like my normal self, because you weren't thinking about like your kids or making sure your husband is fine and fine watching the kids or whatever. Like we were just able to chat like normal, like we were before all of them. So yeah, I'd agree with the Dallas trip. That was really special.
And it's weird how quickly you go back to being like, okay, I'm the kid and dad's in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, I don't know what it was, but it was like, oh, dad will take care of us. Like I just automatically was like, oh, he's got this. I'll just do this over here.
I was going to say too, like, and this is probably like a really nice benefit of being the youngest, but like if we're on a family trip, I'm never going to be the one like going to get the rental car. You know what I mean? Like, that's definitely going to be mom or Tara. Like it's not me. Or like, I don't know. I'm just thinking like when we were growing up, like I never was the one that was like the next in charge. So I've always just gotten to be like passenger princess and like not have to worry about like directions, or it's like, oh my gosh. Okay, my answer to this question is our last, I don't know what it was, but there was something so incredibly peaceful and sweet about our last trip to Florida when all of us went, and Phil came like halfway through the week. But the weather was like kind of chilly, and so like some days it was warm enough to be outside and some days it wasn't. And our dad had just had surgery and he wasn't golfing, so he was around the house like a ton. And we watched football and like we had those like cozy fires going. We had this like really, really nice house where it had this huge family room with a big TV and this like really nice like open fire. And there was pretty much enough room for everybody to be in there at once, which was really cute. And we played Heads Up one night with Riv and Indy, and I was literally like crying at their responses. Remember when Riv was trying to act out sneaking out?
And dad's over in the corner and he sees your phone and he goes, oh, he's sneaking out, Kait.
Yes, like being such a dork. But just like something about like there was a couple nights that we stayed in and cooked and like had taco night. And like, I don't know, there was just like a really there was like a thread of that trip just being like really special, where I kept like reminding myself to like soak it in, because I was like, this is such like a cool time, or like it's way more fun to all be in the same house, even though it's like really chaotic. And I also read like 11 books in 7 days. Like it was literally, I was like a freak of nature on that trip. So I got to like in a ton of reading, got to sit in the sun. But I just was thinking about like that time as siblings and with kids. It was just like really sweet. Do you have an answer, Whit?
Oh, I said the Dallas trip.
Oh yeah, you did say that. Okay. Well, that concludes this catch-up episode of the Sister to Society podcast. We are trying to get back onto our grind. Honestly, we should have just said like pause for the summer so that you guys like weren't like, are they coming back? Are they not? And maybe you weren't thinking that at all. We're not sure. But if you were wondering where we were between trips and being in Nashville a lot for birthdays and stuff, and then obviously my IVF journey, I was like at the doctor 24/7. So it just didn't align well this summer to have consistent episodes up. So we'll know that going forward. Maybe we take summers off. Anyways, if you guys like what you heard, please make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also find this anywhere you listen to podcasts. So if you like Spotify or Apple, and we're also on YouTube if you prefer the video version of everything. And we will hopefully be back next week with another episode. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.